right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 38 right here on the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group right here on the I-95 Sports Network on Zingo Television Channel 198. We cannot thank you enough for joining us here on this Friday evening alongside my guys, Ian Schreier, Rob DeLuca. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We can't thank you enough for joining us here for 38 episodes. 38 episodes in, fellas. That's really weird to say. We've done 38 of these. You guys have been a part of almost 10, I think, which is another milestone. We're now hitting the double-digit mark for you guys. Really, really cool. And how has the last week been for you two?
It's really been 10 episodes already. I can't believe that I started, or at least coming on as a guest on this show, right around the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs now, which were months ago. So is it almost Halloween already? We're going to blink. Thanksgiving's going to be here. It's incredible how fast it's going by.
You ain't kidding.
Yeah, look, it's been a pleasure being a part of the show, and the fact that it's been that many episodes already. I mean, just wow. Yeah, I remember coming on in the early days just as a guest, and now here I am full time with you guys. It's been a blast.
It's really crazy, as you both just alluded to be on here. Dating back to the beginning of the summer, and now it's almost Halloween. Really crazy stuff. Time is flying when we're having fun, of course. And again, every Friday we do this. For those that are just tuning in for the first time, this is the Eastern Observer's flagship podcast, and we cannot thank you all enough for being a part of this. So the introduction song that everyone heard is the Dirty Little Hipster, presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Andrew Giordano, our good friend, his brand new single called Dirty Little Hipster. It is available on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Google Play, Pandora, and Spotify, and pretty much wherever music is sold and listened to. So please take a peek at Dirty Little Hipster, Black Cats NYC, a really, really fantastic group. Also, one more thing, guys. We are currently in the middle of a promotional stage here. This is the second promotion that we are giving away here on the Eastern Observer channels, or actually on the Blackjack Media Group channels. And right here, we do have an 8.5 by 11 shot of Donnie Baseball, a.k.a. Don Mattingly, during his heyday with the New York Yankees. And this picture is presented to you by Steiner Sports. We cannot thank Brandon Steiner enough for one of these pictures. And again, the rules of obtaining or winning this photo can be seen as follows. You have to follow us on Twitter and or Instagram by using the following names: at Observe Eastern and or at the Eastern Observer. And why not, guys? Follow us on Facebook at the Eastern Observer too. And the second part of this contest, you have to show us and send us a picture on how you are enjoying the playoffs this fall, or now actually the Fall Classic, by sending us a photo and tagging us at the Eastern Observer. So really good stuff here, guys. And again, there has not been a lot going on this week, but there has been a few things going on in the world of baseball. Obviously, World Series games 1 and 2 are now behind us, and it's an even split 1-1. And Blake Snell, guys, I heard a statistic about, I think it was during game 2 when he was pitching, and from innings 1 through 3, Blake Snell has I think a 1.45 ERA this season during 2020. And from innings 5 and onward, it is over 7. And we were seeing it where he needed to come out and Kevin Cash needed to make a change. We're seeing more and more teams go the analytic route, and we're seeing now that the Rays can compete with the Dodgers. We saw it in game number 2. Kevin Kiermaier, he is the one there. Randy Arozarena. Again, this team cannot be joked around with. This team is really, really good and can compete for the city's second world championship in less than a couple of months, guys.
It's actually been a relatively even series. I know Rob, after game 1, was getting real excited about LA after Clayton Kershaw had the start that he did. But if you look at it statistically, the numbers are strikingly similar. I think through the first 2 games of this World Series, LA is batting .227, Tampa Bay is batting .234. with runners in scoring position. I think in game one, the Dodgers were 5 for 14 and the Rays were 2 for 6. And then in game two, both teams couldn't get a hit with runners in scoring position. So it's been a relatively even series. I'm really excited for game 3 tonight. I don't think we could have asked for a better pitching matchup. You've got one of the hottest postseason pitchers going for the Rays and Charlie Morton against the ace of the LA Dodgers and Walker Buehler. It's going to be a lot of fun tonight.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is what we signed up for when you as a baseball fan in terms of the World Series. You want a good, competitive, close series, and so far I think that's what we've gotten. We've seen some good offense from both teams so far, especially in game 2. The Dodgers really clawed their way back, obviously fell a little short, but nonetheless, that's what you like to see. But I think tonight we're going to see a nice – I think we're due for a great pitching duel, and if there's ever was to be one, it would be tonight with Buehler and Morton. Not even a question.
Yeah, I think, and just by looking at a few of the numbers here, Randy Arozarena, 361, 7 home runs, 10 RBIs. He is clearly right now the leader of this offense. But then, guys, at coming in clutch, his average does not show it, but Brandon Lau has really come in clutch. 3 home runs, 5 RBIs. G-Man Choi as well, Manuel Margot, and who had a lot of familiarity when they played with in the ALCS and the Division Series in San Diego, where he formerly played. But then you also look at the LA Dodgers too, and again, it is depth down the lineup. Austin Barnes doing his thing, and also let's not forget. I really don't want to only say Barnes because we have to look at the big guns. Mookie Betts, Corey Seeger, what he has done since tearing his ACL a couple of years ago. Having the elbow and having Tommy John surgery, not tearing his ACL. He had the elbow issue. And really, he has come back, and he has come back really at a strong pace. And we knew Mookie Betts was going to be big this whole series, this whole season, because they signed him to that 12-year, $350 million deal. No surprise there. You're paying this man so much money, he's expected to do it. But some people kind of gave up on Corey Seager, and I really do believe that he can be he could potentially win the MVP if LA comes away with their first world title in over 35 years, I believe.
I think Corey Seager has the second or third best odds actually right now. I think it might even be second best odds in Vegas right now to be named the World Series MVP. I think only behind Mookie Betts at this point. But going back to your point with regards to Tampa Bay, you're right. Arozarena really carried the Rays through every series in the postseason that they've played in thus far. And how about the fact he's only hitting 167 so far in the World Series? The Rays have been waiting and waiting. Arozarena and Choi were the clear-cut offensive juggernauts for the Rays in those first couple of series. But in the World Series, they've needed players like Brandon Lau and Manny Margot to get going. Margot's hitting 429. Lau had a 2-home-run game in game 2. So they're starting to get contributions from the areas that we weren't seeing in the ALDS, weren't seeing in the ALCS. So the fact that they're getting these contributions from other places really takes a lot more of the pressure off guys like Arozarena, or even on the LA side like Cody Bellinger. I think Bellinger's only hitting 147. Thankfully, their lineup is so potent. They also have other guys that can pick them up. So these teams are even though on paper LA's got the better lineup, they're so comparable right now.
Not only are they so comparable, fellas, but also you know what's really crazy. I saw a graphic not too long ago. I think it was right after the Rays won game 2, and they showed the whole team, the whole Tampa Bay Rays team that makes nearly $30 million prorated for this year. And then they showed a picture of Clayton Kershaw and Mookie Betts thrown to each other. And those two and the whole Tampa Bay Rays team makes the even amount for this year. And only 2 players for the Los Angeles Dodgers make nearly $30 million just this year prorated. It is really admirable. It is remarkable. And this is something else, guys, that I wanted to bring up here because I heard something actually from a good friend of mine, or an old friend, excuse me. I don't want to say good now, but if you're watching, you know why. An old friend of mine, Jake Asman, actually, really, really good kid. And he actually spoke about how Billy Beane, obviously, there is Moneyball, okay? And we've seen the magic that Billy Beane has pulled with Oakland. But the funny thing that they forget to mention all the time is that they've only won, the Oakland Athletics that is, have only won 2 playoff series since 1997. So we look now at Tampa Bay, and we have seen since 2008, this is now their second World Series appearance in 12 years. Why is Tampa Bay not getting a movie? Why is Tampa Bay not able to get the notoriety that Oakland has? And I personally agree with Jake here, where for those that do not know who he is, he's on SB Nation down in Houston, nationally televised, simulcasted with ESPN and Syosset native out here on Long Island. But he brought up that good point, and I wanted to bring it up to you guys and see what you thought on that, because we have seen so much success with Tampa Bay on guys that have been passed up left and right. And again, going back to that graphic, when you make a mere $30 million for the whole team, as opposed to just Mookie and Clayton Kershaw, you're doing something right down in Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting, but at the same time, I guess you have to kind of look at it in terms of just is Tampa Bay really a big baseball market? I mean, let's be real. They also when it comes to a division rival game, they're out-ratioed by Yankee fans, Red Sox fans.
They're out-ratioed by everybody.
Yeah,
literally everybody.
It's not pretty when your own fans aren't showing up to support you. So it's tough to say, because when they have a bad year, no one's keeping up with them. They give up on them, and then they come back when you get years like this. To the contrary of why don't they get a movie, I guess that's where you can look. But yeah, just to dive back a little to take on a Rosarena, guys like that being able to finally step up. I bet you he wishes it was a contract year for him at this point, because he's one of the biggest reasons, if not the main reason, the Tampa Bay Rays are sitting here in the World Series, just 3 wins away from the title.
I think Rob said it best. I think that the Rays and the Marlins play in a state where they don't care about professional baseball. There's no market for it. In football, they care about college. You live in a college state where you're surrounded by the University of Miami, Florida State, and the University of Florida. Saturdays is religion down in Florida, not professional baseball season. We see year upon year how Marlins Park and the Trop continue not to draw any attendance. The only attendance, as Rob and you yourself, Joey, mentioned, is when a local team comes to town. The Yankees, their spring training is in Tampa, so it makes sense why, and there are Yankee fans scattered across the country. So yeah, they're going to draw for those games. They're going to draw for Red Sox games. If they play in interleague, they're going to draw for Cardinal games, or whatever the case may be. They just can't draw. And they are in a lot of ways, though, Joey, yes, comparable to Oakland, because they aren't a team that builds their franchises around signing big market free agents, because they're not a big market team. So you remember guys like Evan Longoria. He was a homegrown player in Tampa Bay. What's going to happen to players like Randy Arozarena? What's going to happen? I mean, we're starting to hit the tail end of rookie contracts for guys like Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, albeit he's not having a good year or even a good postseason, Charlie Morton, players like this that are eventually going to have to get re-signed to contracts. So I don't disagree with you, but the problem is the audience, as Rob mentioned, the audience is not there. There's not enough people in Florida, unfortunately, that care about professional baseball now.
And I can allude to that, especially for going down to Marlins Park one summer during, I think it was 2015. And for those that know Marlins Park, it's in the middle of Little Havana, number one, which is not a bad thing. It's just, it's kind of just planted in Little Havana. So it's a very small area, and it's almost like similar to the Barclays Center, where it's just planted in the middle of Flatbush and Atlantic Avenue. And then Marlins Park is this kind of the same thing, but it's like in a square, and there's only one lane again all around, and there's really no garages, no nothing. And I remember we saw Clayton Kershaw, and it was against the Dodgers, and a majority of those fans were Dodger fans. And it's really a shame, because, again, this Tampa Bay team, and even the Miami Marlins too, I wouldn't be surprised, and I really wish Don Mattingly would be the National League Manager of the Year, what he has done with the Marlins.
I think he absolutely is.
I think I don't remember the exact I don't remember, did he get it? No, not yet.
You're talking no, they didn't announce it, but I don't see how he doesn't.
Yeah. So like I said, I personally believe that he will get it. He should get it, and if he doesn't, then it's a sham. But what the whole point is that, again, these two teams, both the Marlins and the Rays, they are slowly on the rise. And it's a shame that Tampa, just a short couple of years ago, they were talking about splitting between Montreal and Tampa to be their home.
Right.
And because they simply could not field a full-time team down in Tampa because of the Trop, because St. Petersburg would not give them a new building. And for Miami, who wants to be in Miami in June? It is terrible down there. The humidity is at 150%, and it's 150 degrees down there too. So it's like you've put yourself in an oven. That's really no good. Going back to Tampa and the Dodgers, this is the first time that every single player on the Tampa Bay Rays will be facing Walker Buehler. There are also 7 total players on the LA Dodgers roster that have faced Charlie Morton. When? Well, we have to remember that Charlie Morton was a Houston Astro not too long ago. Austin Barnes, Cody Bellinger, Kike Hernandez, Jock Peterson, Corey Seager, Chris Taylor, Justin Turner have all faced Charlie Morton, and not a single one of those guys mentioned have a home run or an RBI against Charlie Morton. Little bit of fun fact there for everybody, but the best one in just 2 at-bats, really doesn't really count, is Kike Hernandez at 500 batting average. Again, really doesn't matter at that point because of that. Corey Seager is also batting 0. He's over 5 against Charlie Morton lifetime. So crazy stuff. Let's come back closer to home, fellas, and let's look towards Ian Schreier's New York Mets. Now, there is some talk here that because of some financial disparities and some, let's call it, not honest things going on, and some legal things going on, that's probably the better word, with Steve Cohen, that there could potentially be some roadblocks for him to officially acquire the New York Mets. I believe that actually was wiped away just earlier with Major League Baseball, but there is still one more hurdle, fellas, and that is now New York City's Mayor Bill de Blasio, who now potentially has the right to say no to the transaction. Mets fans all around the world, tell us your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, please, comment, like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook. Put it on there. We want to hear what you think. But we have a fan that is a host of this show, and that is Ian Schreier. So let's hear it from the horse's mouth, right from himself. Let's hear it, Ian.
So the legalese of the agreement that was set back in 2006 between the Mets and Citi Field said that the city, or I guess the mayor in this case of the city, Bill de Blasio, can deny transfer of the Mets, of the franchise and the stadium to another owner if they have been found guilty of a felony. Steve Cohen has never actually been found guilty of a felony. He was reportedly involved with an insider trading scheme going on at his hedge fund at the time, SAC Capital Advisors, but he has never himself been convicted of a crime. So they don't have. So to me, when I think of the case of maybe Bill de Blasio telling the Mets no, telling Steve Cohen no, and the Wilpons retaining ownership of the team and having to go through the buying process all over again, is I think, do we really want to? I think there's going to be so many hoops that they're going to have to jump through in terms of the legal matters of it all. This is going to go right to court, even if de Blasio tells the Wilpons and tells ownership that they can't sell to Steve Cohen because he's never been found guilty of a crime. So based on what it says contractually, they can't on those grounds alone. They can try. They'll go to court. They'll probably lose, but they can't, based on those contractual words, not allow transfer of the team to Steve Cohen. Aside from that, there's a pretty big pandemic going on in our country, and especially in New York right now, and especially surrounding New York City. So I would hope and think that what's happening with the number of deaths and the number of cases that we've had in this country, in the world, in the last 7-8 months, is a little more paramount than the sale of a baseball franchise, at least right now.
That's fair. Yeah, absolutely. And it's very funny because it's not even funny. It's just, it really is the truth. And now I want to look at the fact that Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Bulls, guys, Rob DeLuca, I want to start with you first. Your thought on this man who has a lot of money. Let's not forget, he's got a lot of money. He is personally worth, I think he is in the billions. He has a buh next to illions. Either it's mil or buh, and he's got buh. So, for those that have just tuned out after I sounded like a kindergartner, why would Jerry Reinsdorf say no?
I mean, I just don't understand why he's getting himself involved here. But look, the best way I can go off of knowing Jerry Reinsdorf, it's a sad way to do it, but it's the only way I personally can do it, is going off how he was described in The Last Dance. So, and he was obviously portrayed very poorly by Michael Jordan and company, that nobody seemed to like him. And you just got to wonder, like, why, what is he doing? Trying to, like, does he want some sort of, I'm sure Ian can answer this better than I can, just does he want the Mets instead? Does he want to throw his hat into the ring? Like,
no.
Then if not, I don't personally understand the point. No, I don't.
I'll jump off of Rob's point. The situation is actually twofold. A, Jerry Reinsdorf actually has a personal friendship with Alex Rodriguez. That's A. B, the other part of it is he actually lobbied because of the insider trading scheme against Steve Cohen's potential bid for the Dodgers in 2012. So there's the two primary reasons. Most importantly, I don't even think it goes back to the insider trading scheme right now with respect to the purchase of the Mets, as it does relate more to Alex Rodriguez. 95% of the MLB ownership committee, now it still has to go before all the owners, but 95% of the MLB ownership committee has come forth and said, yes, we approve the sale. Reinsdorf was the only no out of that entire committee. Fred Wilpon has the Wilpons, the Katzes have a very strong and deep tie to the league dating back to when Bud Selig was commissioner of baseball. They have, despite the fact how infuriated Mets fans have been over the way that they've owned the team since the Bernie Madoff scandal and the way that they haven't spent money like a big market franchise, they have always been in the good graces of the league office. And now Andy Martino has continued, who's a baseball beat reporter for SNY, has reported that this is still going to have to go through de Blasio. But everything that I've been reading and everything that I've been seeing has really led to the fact it doesn't seem like this is going to get held up, because of what I've heard is that if Fred Wilpon wants to sell this team, Fred Wilpon's going to sell this team to who he wants to and when he wants to. So I don't think that there's anything at this point right now holding this up other than maybe Bill de Blasio. But based on what I said before with regards to the the legalese of the agreement back in 2006, Steve Cohen was never convicted of a crime. He was never found as a felon. Yes, his hedge fund was involved, but he was never convicted himself. So you could take that to court, but there's nothing to show that Steve Cohen was the one that was individually found guilty.
Not being found guilty for Steve Cohen, that's a positive for all Mets fans, especially because he is personally worth $14.6 billion, where for those that do not know, he is a lifelong New York Mets fan, number one. Number two, there's a lot of talk where potentially the New York Mets could be bringing in marquee free agents for the first time since ever. So, to be able to bring in a player such as George Springer, which really that would be bringing him home, if you will, because he is from the Connecticut area. He went to UConn when UConn was with the Big East still, first go round. And then also JT Realmuto, he's not really going far. If he were to come to the Mets, there's a lot of talk where he could be signing with the Yankees. So could be a borough battle, if you will. So we will have to see what happens. And there was also some talk where Reinsdorf could potentially be trying to convince other owners to try and hop aboard with him in denying this sale. We'll have to see.
Joey, has there been any talk, and I didn't want to interject there, but has there been any talk, and I'm not trying to sound like a biased Mets fan here, I haven't really heard a lot of talk about, unless it's been recent, of Real Muto going to the Yankees. The move that's really been picking up steam, the first move really of the MLB offseason that's really been picking up steam has potentially been Yadi Molina going to the Yankees to mentor Gary Sanchez and make him a better defensive catcher, and to also work with Kyle Higashioka. So I have not heard maybe the same rumor you have with regards to Real Muto, but I know that as of yesterday that there was a little more of Yadi Molina to the Yankees picking up steam.
Well, we'll see what happens if DeLuca, we're going to get to you in a second. We're going to see also if Gary Sanchez even will come back. Kyle Higashioka won the job, essentially, in the postseason. We will see how much Gary Sanchez will cost next year, and we'll see if they even want him back. Is it a whole nother project that this Yankees franchise wants to deal with? Rob DeLuca, your thoughts moving forward before we have a couple of breaking news skits.
All right, yeah, I mean, look, this is look, Yadi Molina would mean, yes, that he's coming in as a mentor role, no doubt. Probably play a couple games here and there, especially when someone eventually inevitably gets hurt, because that's just how it is on the New York Yankees these days. And but JT signing JT Realmuto would mean that's it for Gary Sanchez. He'd be gone. He'd be done. Higashioka would be backing up Realmuto at that point, because like you said, Kyle Higashioka did very good. He certainly hit his way to the job. He can hit better. He can block the ball very well. The only thing he doesn't have that Gary Sanchez does is the arm. Gary Sanchez's arm is far superior when it comes to throwing a guy out at second base or third base. Gary Sanchez is very strong in that sense, but it's essentially his only strength, as from what we've seen this past season from Gary Sanchez was a whole lot of nothing. Not a lot of hitting, not a lot of blocking balls at the plate, just not a lot of
Gary Sanchez, Rob, was really, he batted under 150 the whole season.
Terrible.
He was, and don't get me wrong, it was an only 60-game season, but you would figure that a lot of and from what we heard in the beginning of the season, where when you see where, it would be an asterisk of a season. We've heard that in professional sports all of 2020. We've heard that. But now we look at it and we would hear, okay, so 361, which is what DJ LeMahieu finished or concluded the season with. You would figure that those numbers would most likely for everybody be higher because the amount of at-bats and hits were so much lower, right? But here, in Gary Sanchez's case, it was so low that if you look at it, that means that it was probably, if this was a whole 162-game season, and if he stayed on this pace the whole year, this man could seriously have either been released, traded. He can't be sent down. I mean, could he be sent down? I don't. But at that point, and at this point in his career, I think Brian Cashman would be giving him the boot, but that's a whole nother conversation for time. But it's crazy to hear, and especially from what Ian Schreier just announced, where I did not hear about the Yadier Molina gig.
Right, I didn't hear that.
Where that could be, that would be huge for Gary Sanchez to, again, the Molina brothers, all three of them, Benji, Jose, and Yadier, they all have beyond amazing catching experience. And I think that they would be great to mentor him, but we'll see how much longer does Yadier Molina have? And also there was some talk that was it for him. He was done after this year.
I don't want to discount any possibility of Real Muto coming to the Yankees, because I think there would be a team out there that would absolutely take on the talents of Gary Sanchez. They could see taking on Sanchez with his hitting ability, his ability, like Rob said, to throw out a runner at second or third base. So if there's a team that's really struggling behind the dish, let's say the Mets, would they take on Gary Sanchez if the Yankees are, and I think he's still working off his rookie contract, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah. So, at that point, you're really not asking the Yankees to eat much. So, and even though Steve Cohen says he's going to come in here and spend money, you really would be upgrading that position at a much smaller premium. But I mean, I know the Mets are certainly in on Real Muto. I know they don't want to give him the number of years and the amount of money. I think he's asking for somewhere in the realm of 8 years, up to $200 and something million, which is outrageous. But listen, he's the best catcher in the game right now in terms of being. In terms of having all the tools that you need to have a dependable backstop back there. Look, the Mets have not had a dependable backstop who can hit the ball and play the position and do what he needs to do back there since Paul LaDuca. I mean, for the Mets, it's always been a plug and play in that position. Guys like Brian Schneider and Hank White, I don't know, Henry Blanco. I always remember him as Hank White. Rod Barajas. Like I'm going up and down the list of Josh Tolle, Mike Nicholas. Like I mean, I'm going back 10 years now, 10 plus years of just Mets catchers because they just have never invested into finding the right guy to put back there since LaDuca left. Yeah, I mean, you had Piazza, you had LaDuca. Who's come since? I mean, they were hoping Wilson Ramos would kind of refine his Washington form. Very, very solid last year. Not so great this year. So, and he's a free agent. So I'm not so sure I'm ready to re-sign him so quickly. If they can sign Muto to a deal, they need somebody back there that's dependable, and he provides that.
Yeah, it's that would be good, but at 8 years, I wouldn't give that either, especially because of the way that I don't want to say he declined, but his play was not great this past year. Guys, breaking news from Andy Martino of SNY. He had recently announced about an hour ago that the mayor's office, that City Hall, is evaluating the sale of the New York Mets to Steve Cohen. So we will get you that news. If something does break, we will be the first ones to let you guys know once we receive it. Also, another breaking news, fellas. Antonio Brown is quote-unquote very close to signing in Tampa Bay. Turn of events from where he originally was or was most likely going to sign, which was in Seattle. Yeah. And I'll tell you this much, for all of those that want to know on this new edition of What Grinds My Gears. Now, I'm going to tell you this, guys, and this is my one quick thing. It doesn't help my fantasy team because not only do I have Chris Godwin, I also have DK Metcalf as well. So either way, I was going to be screwed. So good stuff there, fellas. But that was very, very annoying.
I think it's actually kind of funny, and since it is breaking news, I didn't hear anything about him going to Tampa Bay leading up to the show, and the fact that he played 2 games in New England with Brady, so now he's going to go to Tampa Bay and go play with Brady. I don't understand. I know we'll get the Bucs in a little bit. I don't understand what they're doing with trying to load up on the.
They're giving time.
Has again and again now recently proven to be a cancerous. There's no doubting his talent, but let's remember how much of a cancer he became to every franchise he's played since he's left Pittsburgh. There's a reason that teams don't want to pick him up. So now when things are fine, you just housed Green Bay, you're ready to pick up a guy that might ruin everything, all the good mojo you have going on with your team right now.
I mean, look, it's not that surprising, honestly. There was traction of this during the offseason that when he'd come back from his suspension because he wanted to play with Tom Brady wanted to play with him. This isn't too surprising to me. Now, of course, I had forgotten about it once Adam Schefter said he was seriously considering Seattle. But then once I saw the breaking news that he has become very close to signing in Tampa Bay, I was like, oh, right. Now it was like, oh, right. How did I forget about that? It just doesn't seem too surprising to me anymore.
Just, Rob, make sure you put your life savings down next week when the Giants play the Bucs on Monday Night Football.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
You live in Jersey. Put everything down on Tampa Bay. It's a lock.
Don't get me started on the Giants, please.
It is an absolute perfect segue that my good friend Ian Schreier has done for us here, and it helps Rob DeLuca in this new segment of What Really Grinds Rob DeLuca's Gears. Ladies and gentlemen, Rob DeLuca is a diehard New York Giants fan, and God help him yesterday because, let's not forget, how about the catch to seal the deal yesterday that did not ever occur? Ladies and gentlemen, what a disaster. The Eagles should not have won that game. The New York Football Giants should have, but it did not happen. Rob DeLuca, let's hear it. FCC is on and listening. So be careful with what you say, good sir.
You really want me to do this, huh? I really got to do this? All right.
You do.
I do. I guess I do. I guess that's why I don't get paid to be here. But nonetheless, the New York Football Giants yet again showed why they are just terrible. Why they are just the single most embarrassing team outside of the New York Jets. This was awful. This game was 21-10 with less than 5 minutes to go when right as Carson Wentz threw that 60-yard bomb over whatever his name is, Lewis, number 37 on the Giants defense, had a horrible game. He did. He was burned countless times, took at least 2 stupid penalties to put the Eagles in better position. And honestly, yeah, great for you. You stopped the 2-point conversions, and then this all comes down to 2 things. The defense choked it away. Granted, I feel a small amount of sympathy for the defense when you're out there for 40 minutes a game. But still, you can't choke away like that in the last 5 minutes of the game, up 11 points. But also, this comes back to one simple thing: Evan Ingram not catching a football when it matters. That the lack of clutch from this man since his career began a few years ago is zero. He has never done anything to help the New York Giants win a football game since he has gotten here. He is like the John Carlos Stanton, where all of his production comes when it doesn't matter. It's just pointless yards, pointless fantasy points, all in garbage time, all when it doesn't matter. When the game's on the line, he doesn't show up. And poor Daniel Jones, who with the classiest move you can make, channeled his Eli Manning and said, I got to put that ball in the better position. Bro, where? Where else could you have possibly put that pass for him to catch it? There's literally not a more perfect place than where he threw it for that ball to be caught, giving the Giants a first down, which would effectively have run out the clock because the Eagles had already burned a timeout, so the game would have been over. This was embarrassing. They are now 1-6. I do not stand this team. This was crushing. I don't get irrationally angry at football games anymore just because of the way the last few years have gone. The last time I was this irrationally angry was in 2015 against the New England Patriots, the infamous Landon Collins dropped interception. I had been very irrationally angry. And before that, not since Deshaun Jackson in 2010 at the Meadowlands, when I was there, 15 years old, watching that. That was also the last time I was irrationally angry. I don't get this angry. But this was just defeating. I feel so defeated, broken, sad, lied to. Awful football. And the fact that the Giants made a trade sending Marcus Golden back to Arizona for a 6th-round pick, I cannot believe the Maras are allowing this stupid man in Dave Gettleman to run the trade deadline when we all know he's getting fired when the season's over. If you know that's going to happen, do not let him run this. Don't let him sell the players. Let someone that's going to be around next year run it. For the love of God, figure it out.
I got to tell you, and we're going to cut this clip tomorrow, and we're going to put this in all Giants groups tomorrow on social media. But again, I mean, I want to hear Ian Schreier because that really is just fantastic. And from another Giants fan, I mean, this DeLuca, when people are going to be watching this tomorrow, this is what they're going to be. This is how they're going to be looking. They're going to be looking like, what is this guy saying? But Ian, now, do you want to feed off of that from Rob there?
Sure. My favorite moment of last night was when, with 6 minutes and change to go, Daniel Jones hits Sterling Shepard on that slant route in the end zone and makes it 21-10. And everyone on Twitter is celebrating prematurely as if the Eagles have never broken our hearts like this, or the Giants, I should say, have blown a lead late against the Eagles, and the Eagles have subsequently broken our hearts multiple times. This team can never seem to win in Philly. This team could be up by 4 touchdowns with 2 minutes left. They'd still find a way to lose the game. It's an annual tradition when the Giants lose to both the Cowboys and the Eagles, because I think I saw a stat that they have not combined 15 losses, I believe it is, to the Cowboys and the Eagles.
Neither of them since 2016.
Yeah, which means they have not beaten the Cowboys or the Eagles. They're 2 biggest division rivals in 4 years, which means the only team you're beating were the now defunct Redskins transitioning into the Washington football team. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So basically, as a last place franchise. Look, at 21-10, I was not celebrating. I had seen this movie before.
I was still scared.
I had seen this movie before, and watching Wentz go down the field, play after play. I remember I texted Rob and I texted you, Joey, and I said, Eagles are winning this game by 3. You can book it. 24-21 is going to be the final score of this game.
Yeah, they apparently
we saw it at the second miracle at the Meadowlands, where the Giants were up 31-10 and they give up that pass up the seam to Brent Selleck to make it 31-17. Don't recover the ensuing onside kick, makes it 31. You just knew everything was coming apart at the seams. Lincoln Financial Field continues to be an absolute house of horrors for this Giants franchise. They can't win there. But there's no listen, you want to blame, like, people want to blame officials for, was that a pass interference call? Deshaun Jackson had his head down. What was Corey Ballantyne supposed to do? It doesn't matter. When in those situations, when you're up 2 possessions, you can't be playing 10. I know you don't want to give up anything over your head. And I'm even talking about the possession that made it 21-17. This team continues. And yes, Rob, I have the greatest sympathy for the Giants defense, because that has been such a bright spot when I was expecting that to be even worse than the Giants offense. Yeah. So you can't be playing 10, 12 yards, putting in 5 or 6 D-backs, not playing.
That prevent last night was
right. With 6 minutes left. Listen, Wentz will be very happy to take the 10, 15-yard throws, and then in 2 minutes they're in the end zone and still have all 3 timeouts. But the biggest play of the game, bar none, is Evan Ingram dropping that ball. You're right. Evan Ingram does things like Giancarlo Stanton. Yeah, he spent most of his career on injured reserve, is where Evan Ingram has spent most of his career. He can't stay healthy. And even when he is healthy, he is not even close to resembling a first-round talent. That ball, Daniel Jones could not have dropped a better pass into Evan Ingram's basket to win the game. I tend to be one of Daniel Jones' worst critics, because I'm a fed-up Giants fan. I want things to finally change. Yeah. But his efficiency rating, I forgot what they said, that he completed, I believe it was, had a passer rating. No, not a passer rating. I can't remember. But I think it was where he completed 88.2% of his throws in the pocket. It's pretty darn good. I mean, granted, a lot of his throws are checkdowns because he doesn't have enough time at the offensive line. So
and the beautiful play calling of Jason Garrett.
Yeah, to Wayne Gallman or to Deion Lewis or whatever the case may be. So I know I'm part of me's kind of ready to move on from Daniel Jones, but let's get back on track here with regards to last night's game. There's no, and then on first, I mean.
Well, all of these ready to get rid of Jason.
Was it Kelsey or Brandon Brooks that gets called for the illegal hands to the face for the face mask to box
Jason Kelsey? Brandon Brooks was on reserve, yeah.
Yeah, to back him up 15 yards to the 17-yard line. It was first and goal from the 17 instead of first and goal from the 2. And you give up that late play where Boston Scott runs a wheel route. I mean, it was a great throw by Wentz, but this is just typical Giants, Eagles. We see it year in and year out. They're 1-6. This is a game that shouldn't even have mattered. This game simply mattered because Daniel Jones had open field in front of him and tripped at the 10-yard line. This is why that game mattered.
That isn't even relevant because the Giants still scored a touchdown on that drive.
Right. The game became relevant because Daniel Jones tripped. The game became relevant because it was an NFC East division rivalry where the teams are separated by a turnpike. This game did not matter. The Giants were 1-5. The Eagles were 4-1. What exactly did this game mean? I'm not trying to downplay.
That's what it meant.
I'm not trying to downplay the fact that if the Giants and I guess I'm having my own little addition here of what really grinds my gears. I'm sorry to take a little bit of the spotlight away from you, Rob. But yes. But it's – and I just lost my train of thought.
That's Giants football for you, Ian.
The game should not have mattered. And I'm not saying that if the team would have won today, I would have been praising the fact that the Giants would have been a half game out of first place. The NFC East is the saddest division in all of
sports. This is a sad excuse for football.
Have we watched the 4 teams playing in this division right now? It's horrible.
Yeah.
The idea that it's absolutely possible that maybe for the first time since the Seattle Seahawks beat the Saints on that Beastquake run by Marshawn Lynch.
Oh yeah.
I think they were 7-9 that year. We could see a team winning the NFC East right now. It's 6-10 or 5-11.
Yes,
that's scary.
That's scary, and that's going to make the NFL change playoff qualifications. You better believe it. If that really does happen, you better believe they're not going to they're going to put a record minimum or something. Division winners have to at least be 7-9 or something. Otherwise, you can't go to the playoffs because you clearly don't belong there. Nobody in the NFC East belongs there right now. And by the way, go Washington on Sunday because I just love the chaos. Bring it in. Make it as horrible as possible. Let's see how bad it can really get. By the way, Ian, you did have the score called, by the way. If the Eagles could
I told you
could convert a 2-point conversion on their line. They literally tried to have us win that game with a last-second field goal by Graham Gano, which we've seen before as Giants fans, but on the wrong side. But the Eagles literally tried to have us win that game because they can't convert a 2-point conversion to save their lives. They're allowing us to run up the field with our quarterback run 80 yards. Nobody wanted to win that football game, it seemed. And yet the Giants still find a way to blow it in 5 minutes.
I mean, can you see how sad it might be a team like for, I don't know, the New Orleans Saints as like a 5 seed or whoever comes out, whoever's the second place team, the Bucs or the Saints, to come out of the NFC South is going to go to Dallas or Philly to go play some team that is 2 or 3 games under 500. That's horrible. I mean, look, Joe Buck's going to be dancing all over the place. Fox is going to be dancing all over the place if they get a chance of Drew Brees or Tom Brady playing in Dallas on a wild card game. But let's talk about how sad that really is.
I mean, hey, send the fans home crying. Send the fans that can now go to Dallas and Philly home crying. Better for me anyway.
On the flip side, fellas, as you guys have taken up all the time to talk about the Giants, the Eagles are now 17-4 in the. I guess let me rephrase that. From 2010 to 2019, the Eagles were 16-4 in 20 total games between one another, and 2 losses. 2 of those losses, guys, I was there for 2 of them. And one of them being the one that Rob actually had sent us yesterday, being the 42-7 loss. That was Andy Reid.
Garbage time in a garbage year for both teams. The Giants missed the playoffs because the Bears didn't win their game, which would have sent us in the wild card. That
essentially that eliminated not only the Eagles. Well, the Eagles were 4-12 anyway that year, but that was it for head coach Andy Reid, and then I remember 2013, 15-7. I'll never forget that. I remember when I was at that game at the Link. That was a horrendous. That was the same year that Nick Foles threw 7 touchdowns, and that was Miracle Nick, round number 1. Fellas, yesterday on the Eagles side of things, there was more injuries to note. Deshaun Jackson goes down. What a shocker. He goes down yet again with this time most likely a high ankle sprain. There is a possibility that he could have surgery. Now they're saying that he most likely does not, which is a positive for Eagles fans. But at this point, it doesn't really matter. Why? Because the Eagles have not really had to worry about their wide receiving core. That's a joke. They now have Travis Fulgham to really have their eyes on. They now have Fulgham as their new number 1 wide receiver. They have John Hightower, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who is an absolute disaster. But again, when you have Fulgham, and also let's not forget Greg Ward as well. So Deshaun was really there as a decoy. He could not stay healthy, and he was just 2 minutes away from staying healthy. 2 minutes away.
How about the cool little fact, Joey? And I just wanted to drop this in there while you were talking about Fulgham and Ward. How about the fact that the no Ertz, no Goddard, And the Eagles' two best receivers right now were both undrafted free agents.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that really is amazing. And that just shows not only for the Giants, that shows for every single football team. All 31 teams have to look at that, and they have to say, regardless of them being 2-4-1, it's next man up. And even though the Eagles have an absolute disaster, or not only an absolute disaster of a season, you have to look at the injuries that have played, that have gone into account with this. The whole offensive line is decimated. Jason Peters is on the injured reserve, designated to return. Brandon Brooks tore his ACL. Tore his ACL in training camp. He's gone. In addition to Lane Johnson having a bum ankle, he now has an MCL sprain, most likely will be put on the injured reserve as well. Jack Driscoll, backup tackle, is most likely going to be put on the injured reserve as well, designated to return. Guys that are just going down this depth chart, they are pulling guys off the street. And again, against the New York Giants, it doesn't matter who it is an NFL team that the Eagles are playing against, and kudos to them for not having the aforementioned Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Alshon Jeffrey, who really I should not have even uttered out of my mouth because he really is a non-factor and has been a non-factor since Super Bowl 52. And really the defense, guys, is something that that really has to be cheered upon, because they can only do so much with an offense that is basically none. It doesn't exist. So the defense has been standing tall for the most part, but the offense simply cannot get it done. I think we are past the let's blame Carson Wentz train.
Joey, I was just going to drop this question to you. So since he just had 350 yards now, so does this pretty much end the whole, oh my God, Carson Wentz is terrible type thing now? Is he back? Is Carson Wentz back?
Carson Wentz is not back. Carson Wentz is not back because yesterday we saw a throw directly into the hands of James Bradbury that was really a throw that could be avoided. It's a lot of these mental mistakes that continue to plague Carson Wentz, and that really is not a good thing for the Eagles' future.
I do got to say, Joey, have him beat someone other than the Giants or the Washington football team. Wait, they didn't even do that.
Right. And that's the issue, is that they couldn't do that. They also had in that game, we did not see in week number 1, anyone by the names of Jason Huntley, Corey Clement. We did not see Jalen Hurts in that game because he was also a scratch. Richard Rodgers, I think he was the third tight end there. John Hightower did not play. Boston Scott, he barely got any touches in week 1. So again, it's very Hakeem Butler, Jason Huntley. These guys are undrafted. These guys are just guys that they're pulling off the street. I don't think the blame right this second, as Carson Wentz is beginning to find a rhythm with Fulgham, with Greg Ward, who, let's not forget, last year was Greg Ward's breakout year. We thought he was a flash in the pan. Turns out he's not. He's finding a lot of chemistry with Rodgers, who was targeted 8 times yesterday. 11 targets for Fulgham, 5 for Scott, 6 for Ward, 5 for Deshaun Jackson before he went down. So again, that's the reason why also, Rob, that I would not say that it is time to look the other way with Carson Wentz, because the guys that I had just named, that's still, again, that he's very comfortable with those guys. But now, because the continuous injuries, the continuous changes, he needs to get comfortable with the guys such as John Hightower, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who is an absolute draft bust, number 1. Number 2, how about Corey Clement, who, by the way, was a Super Bowl hero? He got 1 target, 1 reception for 12 yards, done. Hakeem Butler, Jason Huntley.
Where's Jalen Reagor right now, too?
Jalen Reagor, he's still hurt, torn UCL or torn ligament in his thumb. The cast has come off today, according to NBC Sports Philadelphia, so they could be having him back after the bye week, most likely week 10. We'll see what happens there, but again, a lot to be A lot to be happy with. Just kidding. There's absolutely nothing to be happy with. Moving. No, and that's in all seriousness.
No, there's nothing.
No, you can't be happy as an NFC East team right now. Like, how can you be proud of being in first place right now? Can you really? Like, can you actually be like Ian? Can you actually be proud of first place in this division? Like, for either of you? No,
absolutely not. I mean, what the leading teams in this division both have 2 wins.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the Cowboys; they are a sieve defensively. They are banged up in the linebacking area. They lost Van Der Esch and Lee. They can't stop a nosebleed right now.
And Andy Dalton is not.
The Eagles' offensive line is in shambles. The Giants can't seem to do anything right offensively or stop anybody when it counts. And then Washington, who is starting to put it together defensively, has no idea what they're doing at the most important position in the game. So, no, there's nothing to be proud about.
No, there's nothing to be proud of as well. Something else, too, again, the Eagles are trying to plug holes in everywhere, and yet this is something that I have to say really grinds my gears here, fellas, is the pure fact that we have heard numerous rumblings that Howie Roseman, general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles, is out to be a buyer.
Nobody in their right mind of the NFC East should be a buyer right now. Except for maybe Jerry Jones buying a new quarterback, because Andy Dalton is not in his prime anymore. And if he wants to get the Cowboys back on track and make a serious playoff run, he better go find somebody different. Because
who's out there right now? What are the Cowboys going to go call Joe Douglas and trade for Sam Darnold? Like, who?
Yeah, I mean,
like
don't put anything past Jerry Jones.
Someone's still got to come out of that division. So they're all playing still. I mean, it's scary to say at what 2-4-1 and what
1-5, 1-6.
Like that. The fact that division is still in reach for the Giants and Washington. It's a scary thought. But these teams are still playing for division titles. Even if they finish 6-10 and win the division, they're still playing for their job.
And they're still division champs.
Right.
And they're getting a home game. They're getting a home game in the playoffs. Granted, it might not matter as much for the Giants or football team if they win, because they don't have their fans are not allowed. But granted, that could always change at a moment's notice. But you just never know.
Nothing to be proud of at all. Nothing to look forward to. Eagles will be down $60 million or below, or they will be over the cap $60 million. Really, really tough stuff. We'll see what happens. There's not really anything good to discuss there. So let's keep moving forward where we went back to, or we'll go back to the breaking news that we broke earlier from Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network, who, by the way, had his suspension reinstated from the NFL Network. So that's really good to see Rap Sheet back. Tampa Bay, they put a hurting on Green Bay last week, guys, and now they just signed Antonio Brown for the next couple of weeks. His suspension will be effectively over come week number 8. And then by week 9, I believe, week 8 is their bye week for Tampa. And then week number 9 is when he will be eligible to return. Is Tampa Bay finally coming through, and is Tom Brady finding out who his receivers are? Is he finding out who Ronald Jones is? Is he getting or finally starting to feel comfortable in Tampa Bay?
I would say it's hard not to consider them a favorite in the NFC, which is a very weak and wide open NFC right now. I mean, after the Seattle, especially after Tampa Bay just put an absolute hurting on the Packers, who do you go to next? I mean, how are the Chicago Bears leading the NFC North right now? That is just mind-boggling to me. I'm not going to harp anymore on the NFC East. We know how much of a disaster that division is. The Bucs seem to be right now the cream of the crop in the South. The Falcons are a mess. The Panthers are under a coaching change and still don't have their all-pro running back yet. Drew Brees is not making the throws that we're used to seeing him make, and now Michael Thomas is re-aggravating an injury. So there's a lot to think about with regards to Tampa Bay winning the division. I thought Green Bay was going to finally expose Tampa Bay for the team that they were. I thought coming into that game, they were one of the most overrated teams in football. I expected Rodgers to put up about 4 or 5 touchdowns. I expected the defense to look just hampered down and beaten, and I was wrong. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say that Tampa Bay's for real because I just think that I guess in theory you could say that because there isn't a lot of class right now in the NFC. Seattle, Tampa, Green Bay. You know, I mean, I really wouldn't even throw Chicago in that. With even one loss, I still wouldn't put Chicago in that discussion right now. So, sure, let's say that they're for real, but in the NFC, I would not consider them to be a Super Bowl champion by any means. There's just too many other good teams in the AFC, and I'm not even so sure Tampa Bay could get past Seattle at this point.
Tampa Bay is also, by the way, before we get to Rob DeLuca, ranked 3rd in team defense. DeLuca, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are an interesting team, and, you know, I don't know with how bad they were last year, making the moves they have to fool their fans into thinking they have a legitimate shot at anything right now is a little crazy, but at the same time, it's not working, but it's not like they're a powerhouse team either. It does seem like Tom Brady is really connecting along with Chris Godwin, especially after last game. I mean, that seemed like just a game of catch in the backyard at a couple of points in that game. But nonetheless, I think that the signing of Antonio Brown isn't going to change much, really. I don't think it's going to effectively make them better or make them worse. I think he'll be more of a depth role player more than anything, because why would you attempt to break up any of the chemistry that Tom Brady's already built with his current guys by throwing this guy of all people in there? Like, just let him, like, look, Antonio Brown can be a good football player. If he can keep the drama out of all of it, he'll be very effective. But don't mess with everything Tom Brady's built with his new team here. This is something that seems to be working for now. And with the struggles of the New Orleans Saints, it really is giving Tampa Bay a chance to pull away. They've got another win locked up next Monday night when they come into MetLife and play the Giants. They'll pick up another W and move on to their next game or their bye. I believe their bye week is after the Giants game.
Yes.
But yeah. So then they'll be, I believe that is 5-3, I believe, by that point.
Correct.
5-2. I think 5-2.
5-2. Yes.
Okay, so 5-2 at that point. Yeah, that would be obviously depending on what happens this weekend. But
correct.
Yeah, so maybe 5-3. I might be right. Who knows?
Or 6-2, right?
Yeah, exactly. I might be right. Who knows? But yeah, 5-3 or 6-2 is what it'll be depending on what happens Sunday. But yeah, I think this will be I think this is a fine depth signing. Look, if he leaves the drama back where we left it, this will be a fine signing in terms of depth for the Tampa Bay Bucs, I think it will. It's not going to, like I said, it's not going to make them effectively some sort of Super Bowl powerhouse, but it's not going to make them worse either. It's just going to, it gives them depth.
And I think also this signing too, fellas, I want to say this, and I think this is a bold statement. This signing gives Bruce Arians, Jason Light, and Tom Brady, all of these guys from all the way top to bottom, gives them insurance. And not only for the possibility of Chris Godwin when he went down with a hamstring injury, he missed 5 weeks, mind you, because again, he was on my fantasy team, so I know that very well. 5 weeks he missed. Mike Evans has not been the star wide receiver that not only he's getting paid for, but we have seen the routes that he's running. He looks very uncomfortable. Who has been the most consistent wide receiver there? A man named Scotty Miller, who no one has a clue who he is. Tom Brady has some chemistry with Antonio Brown from last season in the one game that he played for New England. I don't think that this moves the needle on Tampa Bay doing anything, but I do believe that is exactly what DeLuca said. If he can keep the antics and the locker room cancer out of Tampa Bay, he could really be a good depth wide receiver that could potentially be number 4 on that depth chart. He has to work his way to become number 3, guys. The amount of drama that we have seen last year on Hard Knocks to start Okay, back in 2019, he was with the Oakland Raiders. Mike Mayock brought him in from Pittsburgh. Okay, we all remember that. We remember how he didn't want to get his helmet changed with the next gen helmet. We knew about everything with his feet, with the cleats and everything else. There was lots of problems there. And then to make matters worse, then once he was released because he basically berated his general manager, he berated the then Oakland Raiders, he berated John Gruden and his entire team. But then right after that, then he goes to New England, and then he has problems with his moving guys down in Florida. So and then the police are called, and then it becomes domestic disturbance, stuff like this. And as we know in history in the NFL, there is a zero tolerance policy in the NFL. I don't want to say it zero. Let me rephrase that. Zero tolerance is a little far because we've seen Tyreek Hill, Adrian Peterson, all those guys. They're still in the league. It's not zero tolerance, but it's strike one, strike two. Antonio Brown now has another chance to redeem himself. If he screws this up, he should not be brought back into the league. Kareem Hunt is another one. Okay. Kareem Hunt's another one. He was, he did a lot of bad things. Now he's with Cleveland. He was released immediately from Kansas City. Antonio Brown gets another chance. It's not going to mess up chemistry, but there is no doubt in my mind that this signing can be great if Godwin and or Evans go down. Anyone want to conclude that segment?
I think Tampa Bay is just loaded with
names.
Yeah, names with key players like you mentioned, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, just naming a couple. Rojo has really come into his own as the lead running back. I mean, remember a few weeks ago when we were discussing Leonard Fournette is taking carries away from Ronald Jones, and we've not seen that one bit. The best way to kind of compare, I guess, the Antonio Brown signing is a little bit to the way that they're utilizing Gronk. Like people thought that the Gronk signing was going to be this huge impact signing that was going to take Tom Brady back to the Super Bowl and win him another championship.
Well, they're using him as a blocker.
He doesn't need Gronk. Gronk is out there more or less as a decoy. Gronk is a 30-something-year-old man with 60-something-year-old legs. Like he's so banged up. He's got nothing left in the tank, pretty much. I mean, he had a nice game a couple weeks ago, but this is the same thing with Antonio Brown. When was the last time he really saw any game action? I mean, he's a freak athlete. There's no question about that. But how much are they really expecting him to contribute this week, the week after? I mean, it's going to take him a few weeks just to get his sea legs going again.
Right. Well, that's the whole thing. And that's why I personally believe also that if there is an injury, he will be able to come in. And on top of it, too, he's going to be mainly utilized, in my opinion, down the stretch for a playoff run because he has that experience with Pittsburgh. And on top of it, too, there is possibilities, again, as we've said, that Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, who we have seen miss time this season, if those two go down, who else besides Scotty Miller do you have? You need another decoy out there. You need another type player similar to Rob Gronkowski. You had a two tight end set before O.J. Howard went down, okay? Uh-huh. You had Brait and Howard, and then you had Gronk as that decoy who was mainly the blocker. And let's not forget, guys, we remember in the beginning of the season, which, again, time is flying, as we mentioned earlier. That was only 6 weeks ago, week number 1, okay, where Gronk was, there was some questions about his role down in Tampa. What is he doing? Okay, what is he doing there? He's getting paid $9 million to do what exactly? He's getting paid to block. That's what he's doing because he was used as a decoy when O.J. Howard was there. Now we're seeing that, okay, well, Howard's down. He blew out his Achilles. Now he has to be utilized more into the offense. I think that we're going to start seeing and I agree with you, Ian, for sure, that his legs are gone. He should be in WWE, and he should be on the Fox Sports set in Los Angeles. And it's very
take him in a second, I'm sure.
Oh, well, not only that, but also Carissa Thompson and Terry Bradshaw, they were talking about saying, oh, my God, we miss our coworker. Well, I mean, yeah, and I think, maybe deep down he's missing them too. All joking aside, though, he has to be utilized now, and I think that with that Antonio Brown sighting, it only helps, but it does not move the needle, in my opinion. So to answer the question, are they for real? I do not believe so. In the NFC, yes, I believe that they are real. I do believe, though, the Super Bowl champion will be coming out of the AFC once again.
I can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Guys, something now, actually, another NFC team in absolute shambles, the Minnesota Vikings. My goodness, they acquired Yannick Ngakoue from Jacksonville, okay, in the beginning of the season, just a few days before week number 1. And then all of a sudden, a bombshell comes down from the likes of ESPN's Adam Schefter, where Yannick Ngakoue was traded from Minnesota to Baltimore. Why was he traded? Why did Spielman? Why did Rick Spielman? Excuse me, I was thinking of Chris, his brother. Why did Rick Spielman trade him now, week 7? Well, because let's not forget, they signed him to a 1-year deal worth $12 million. They basically ripped up the franchise tag and said, all right, we're going to sign you to a 1-year deal. See if you could prove it. He hasn't been able to do it. And instead of letting him go for basically nothing, you might as well get some sort of draft capital for him. You got something.
I think he's actually done a pretty decent job his 6 games in. I wouldn't say that he lived up to the billing. I think he was put in a tough situation where this team and their defense have been just hampered by injuries. I mean, they're 1-5. I mean, they're not impressive to watch right now, but defensively, they have 6 defensive. I believe it's 6 defensive players right now that are out. Actually, 8 defensive players that are out. 5 of them are on the IR, including your other Pro Bowl star defensive end, Daniel Hunter, who before the season started had a herniated disc in his neck and needs season-ending surgery. So he's done. So they are hampered right now by injury, and you can't blame Minnesota for a guy who is a rental player, 1-year, $12 million deal. You don't know if he's going to re-sign. So, and you know that you're going to right now are very well in the running for a top 5 draft pick. Why not try to accrue more draft capital? I don't think it was a bad move by Minnesota. I think you don't know whether or not you're going to resign this guy. You don't know if he's going to just look for a big contract on the open market at the end of the season. So I think Rick Spielman made the right move and kind of cut bait while he still could. And he didn't get such a bad return. I mean, a 3rd-round pick this year and a conditional 5th. I mean, I would certainly take that 3rd-rounder this year for a guy who's going to be a free agent at the end of the season.
Rob DeLuca, your thoughts on now him going back to the AFC?
Look, I mean, maybe the change of scenery is something he could use to help himself. Like, yeah, he wasn't having a good year, but then again, was anyone on the Vikings having a good year? No. The Minnesota Vikings, like you said, Joey, are in shambles. And honestly, I don't think a lot of people expected them to be. I certainly didn't. I didn't expect them to be this bad. But again, it just comes back to what do you have to do to go in the right direction? Like, you fire people, you don't fire people, you trade some players, you don't trade some players. You know, there's a lot of decisions to be made, and sometimes they either work, they don't work, or they don't make a difference at all. And I think this will be one of those that doesn't really make a difference at all with the Minnesota Vikings, really. I think it's just they're going to be on the same pace for the rest of the year, essentially. Because, I mean, at this point, with where they're at, why even try, especially with their division actually out of reach? Why would they even try to get back into this race? I personally
no. There's no coming back, especially when Green Bay and Chicago are going to be running away with it. You're down roughly 3 games or 2.5 games in the division, and four.
Yeah.
The
Bears are 5-1. Green Bay. Yeah, because the pseudo Bears are 5-1. So, I mean, look, they are the worst. Let's be real. They are the worst 5-1 team I've ever seen.
From Minnesota. It's
the worst 5-1 team I've ever seen. They are only winning because Nick Foles is there. And you can't. There's no convincing me otherwise. Look at the first 2 games. The Lions beat themselves, and the Giants beat themselves. That's how Mitch Trubisky got them to 2-0. And then Nick Foles steps in, and look what happens. Just miracle after miracle.
It's true. You look at the injuries that Minnesota has. Danielle Hunter, George Iloka, who, let's not forget, just a few years ago was a big time safety who was signed from Oakland at the time, and then he was signed in Cincinnati when they were going through that whole phase of could Marvin Lewis finally get that first playoff victory? Well, guys, it didn't happen. Womp, womp, womp. It didn't happen. George Iloka's career went down the toilet, and he just came back, or actually was just activated onto the active roster from the practice squad. As we said, Iloka, he is now also on the injured reserve as well. Danielle Hunter, Tyler Higbee. Tyler Higbee is an offensive guard as well. Pat Effline as well. He is the starting left guard there. He is no longer active. Excuse me, he's no longer active. And also on season-ending injured reserve, Anthony Barr. Humongous loss in or up the middle, if you will, for the Minnesota defense. So this team, not only, as Rob DeLuca had alluded to, is in shambles at 1-5, they also guaranteed a lot of money to a mediocre quarterback who most people actually called when he was with Washington, and most Washington fans said, hey, that's pretty good. If he wants to get paid elsewhere, that's nice, but we ain't paying him. And Minnesota fans were saying, oh, goody, this could be, we could be put over the top. Stephon Diggs didn't like it. And
I warned him.
Down. And Mike Zimmer, I don't know if he likes it. He's naturally a defensive coach. I don't know how he gets better. Kevin Stefanski is gone. There is John DeFilippo is gone because he's now in Cleveland with the aforementioned Stefanski. So a lot of question marks around the long-term durability of not only Cousins, but also the roster. And also, I hate to say it, guys, but how about Rick Spielman? Again, he's done such a great job, but I really think that the biggest no-no of a signing and the biggest whoopsie was Kirk Cousins. To guarantee him all of that money, $84 million to start, and then another Ian Schreier, I think it was another 30 or 40 million, I think that they had guaranteed him, or 20 or something along those lines. That I think
I don't remember the specifics of the contract. I just remember it was, if not fully, it was close to fully guaranteed.
Again,
I remember when we first found out about that deal, and I was like, wow. I mean, you know what? He's going to go to a team finally that's going to be a contender every year. That he's going to play with guys like Diggs and Thielen and have the opportunity to finally lead them to a championship. It felt like Kirk Cousins was just always in the wrong city, that he just needed that change of scenery. But that contract was just outrageous for a guy who had shown signs of brilliance and then had shown signs of being in the dumps. That's really the the Kirk Cousins story, more or less. Is there are days he looks great, and there are days that you wonder why they even signed him to that big of a contract.
Little tidbit here for everybody here. Our good friend, or actually my good friend, and one of the Eastern Observer's own, Anthony Tornatore, the lead Minnesota Vikings writer, and also his friends at Fansided, also known as the Viking Age. Fansided is a really, really good source for everything sports, whether it be college, high school, professional, etc. And his person actually at Fansided said that during the next two seasons, that includes next year, 2021 and 2022. You ready for his cap numbers, fellas? 2021, he will be making from this year $21 million prorated. Okay, that was nice. Okay, that was good. $21 million, sure, not a problem. It jumps $10 million to $31 million in 2021. But then here's the good one in 2022, fellas. Ready? Drum roll, please. $45 million for Kirk Cousins, respectively. $45 million for Kirk Cousins in 2022. That will be the cap hit for the Minnesota Vikings. And boy, oh boy, is Rick Spielman poking himself saying, what the heck did I do?
I never thought that a single contract would actually. I'm talking about for a quarterback recently, at least. I never thought a quarterback contract that could exceed so much more than what he deserved was Joe Flacco after he won that Super Bowl with Baltimore. And man, did Kirk Cousins blow it out of the water! I've got no words for that.
Yeah, and listen, you know what? Joe Flacco is not a Trent Dilfer. Okay, he's not the worst quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl. He's not.
I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Listen, it's okay. You know why? Because New England fans now always have to say that they lost to a backup. So eventually, who became the Super Bowl MVP. So again, it's a lot of uncertainty in Minnesota, but I think that this deal, going back to, as you said, you actually brought up Joe Flacco, his old employer in Baltimore. I think that this is a great deal for Baltimore, and I think that not only for a stout defense, who actually just lost Brandon Williams as well, I believe for due to COVID, or he was in close proximity with someone who tested positive for COVID. He can really fit in there, and possibly there could be some shuffling on the defensive line. And again, Baltimore is ready to do this. They are ready to go back to the to shine bright in the limelight, and hopefully for their sake, go up against the AFC elites in Kansas City and the Tennessee Titans. They can be put up there as well. Let's keep moving forward. We talk about the AFC, guys. We have not spoken about the AFC North in a really long time as a whole, guys. And the reason being is because Baltimore was they were always in there 8-8, 9-7, but Pittsburgh was also there as well. But last year, let's not forget, when Ben Roethlisberger went down with an elbow injury, and Mason Rudolph had to take over, and Jeff Driscoll had to take over. There were these guys that, they basically, again, had to plug in holes at the quarterback position, and they could not get there. Cleveland was supposed to be the AFC North winner. Cincinnati, we knew, was always going to be dead last. But now, guys, it looks to me like it is a 3-team race, but Pittsburgh made it known that, and especially Ben Roethlisberger too, has made it known that he is not ready to get older or to think of as that old-time QB.
I disagree. I think that the Steelers are still, until they play this weekend against Tennessee, I think are right now one of the probably the most overrated team in the AFC in terms of their record. I mean, they're undefeated, but Cleveland is one of the most also overrated 4-1 team, at least entering last week's game against Pittsburgh, 4-1 teams in all of football. You look at week 1, they played the Ravens. They lost 38-6. The next 4 weeks, they played Cincinnati, Washington, Dallas, Indy. I don't need to elaborate on all 4 of those teams. We know that their struggles. We've discussed them multiple times. There was no reason that with players like Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, and so on and so forth, Austin Hooper, that this team couldn't pull out wins against those franchises. Granted, they nearly blew one of the biggest leads probably in their franchise's history to Dallas and still came out on top. But this was a show-me game for the Browns to say, okay, well, we lost 38-6 to Baltimore. Let's prove the doubters wrong. Let's go into Pittsburgh. And even if we, you know what, it would have at least been respectful had they gone out there and just, if they lost, at least lost at a respectable score. They lost 38-7, and that 7, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think the score at one point was 31-0. I don't remember if I'm exactly right about that, but 31-0.
I believe you're right.
It's a they're like Rob said. They're a pseudo team right now. There was no. The Browns finally showed who they were. Do they? I think that they are very lucky right now that they are. Right now, they're actually the number 6 team in the AFC right now, so they would actually be a wild card team. They play the Bengals on Sunday, which should, in theory, be a win. And then after that, they actually start a huge 3-game homestand where they can prove the doubters wrong. There are games against winnable teams in that stretch: the Raiders, the Texans, and the Eagles. So all three games being at home, and Cleveland has had fans at their home games. So they do have winnable games on their schedule, but they cannot match up with the Steelers or the Ravens of this division. Not one bit.
No, and that's fine. They don't have to, but all they need to do is just get that 6th seed, and they make the playoffs for the first time in, I want to say 2004,
maybe
in that range.
No, they went 1 year with Derek Anderson.
Oh yes, okay.
Yeah, they went 1 year with Derek Anderson. But
7.
You're right, Joey. You're right. Listen, once you make the show, once you make the playoffs, right? It's a different mentality.
It can happen. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have to realize there's one extra team in each division that will be making the playoffs. And why can't the Cleveland Browns be that team? They are so inconsistent. That it is very possible that this team could conceivably win against the Bengals, as you alluded to. The Raiders, who completely are in shambles as well. We'll get to them in just a minute with the whole offensive line testing positive for COVID-19. Houston Texans, they are an absolute disaster as well, ever since DeAndre Hopkins was traded away. The Eagles, we don't need to elaborate more. The Jacksonville, all of these games, with the exception of their division opponents, are winnable games.
They're winnable games, but they can also be, I see 3 opponents also where the wheels can also fall off.
Yeah. Giants aren't one of them, by the way.
No. But that's a little bit further down the schedule. But
that's week 15.
Look,
at MetLife.
Right. Like Houston, Deshaun Watson. I mean, listen, they're not having a good year whatsoever. They still have Deshaun Watson. The Raiders, yes, their line's been completely exposed to COVID. We don't know what's going on with them right now. But before this all went down with respect to their O-line having COVID, Josh Jacobs, Derek Carr having a solid year, Darren Waller, a exceptional option at tight end for that franchise. You talk about the Eagles. Like, yeah, the Eagles are having their struggles, but they're certainly showing that they have a capability to stay in games, especially against a Cleveland team that just beats up on bad teams. So in theory, yeah, they should beat up on an Eagles team, but we've seen it year in and year out where a team like the Browns, where the wheels they fall off at the snap of the finger because they have the talent there. They just can't seem to ever put it together when it matters.
Does Cleveland end 2020 with a winning record? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
I think actually they even make the playoffs. I think so.
DeLuca, your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, I mean, look, they are definitely overrated. There's no doubting this. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They've got a real, outside of their division, they've got a real cupcake schedule out there. There are not that many difficult games. There's a reason they're 4-1 because they're just not playing tough opponents, I guess. I mean, maybe you can make an argument for the Colts, but not really. I don't know. The Colts
and they beat the Colts by 9.
Yeah.
They did. I mean, yeah, the Colts, they make you ask questions, but then you're playing on Washington, you're playing Dallas, you play a real team, you play the Steelers, you lose by 30. You play the Ravens, real team, you lose by 30. You know, that's not a good sign. You gotta at least show some sort of hope when you're playing a real opponent here. You know, and when it comes to the powerhouses, like their 2 division opponents, they just flat out didn't show up. So you gotta wonder in these tougher games, not that there are that many, but there are certainly a couple, as Ian mentioned, that there could be some questions, maybe. And I don't know. I do think they'll probably go around 9-7, 10-6 this year, just because of the very weak strength of schedule coming up, and then down the line towards the end of the season. But yeah, it'll be a close. And with the expanded playoff, obviously now 7 teams, and I just it'll be interesting.
We've heard also from general manager Andrew Berry as well, who has come out publicly and has said that, there are some defensive adjustments that need to be made in the offseason. And there's no doubt about it, because Olivier Vernon is way past his prime, and he's getting paid too much money from the Browns. From originally that contract was from the Giants, and thank you, Jerry Reese, when he was trying to save his job. Essentially, that didn't happen. But again, there's so many, and a lot of it we see on the defensive side of the ball too. And really also the offense too. There are still blundering questions out there, fellas. Is Baker Mayfield the answer? Is he the answer? Is he still up there where, there's question marks? Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, they're both locker room cancers from their respective teams. Miami, the Giants. The
Browns are going to have to decide. I mean, he's got one more year left after this. So the Browns, I mean, look, they're in a position right now where they're, for the first time in a long time, they're not going to have a top 5, if not maybe even top 10 draft pick. So, based on how the future looks for the Browns, it seems like it's going to be Baker or bust. I don't think that Baker has done. I think Baker's done probably just enough at this point. If he ends up leading them to the playoffs, he gets his extension this offseason. He doesn't even have to hold out. But I think he's done just enough to make Browns fans feel comfortable, and they've put enough talent around him for him to be successful. And like I said, if it leads to a playoff appearance, like I said, he's not going to have to hold out.
Andrew Berry has done a fantastic job replacing, of course, Joe Thomas. Not only Joe Thomas, but also he also has David Njoku. He also has Austin Hooper. He's got a lot of guys that he can rely on, that Baker Mayfield can rely on, and now it just has to come down to, can Mayfield come up with these connections, and can he really lead them to the promised land? Not the promised land yet, but again, he has to come up with that chemistry, and I don't want to keep saying that the shortened OTA season or no preseason had an effect on it. I personally believe it did, but we have to stop with that 7 weeks in. I'm sorry, it does. And regardless of our time in a pandemic, we have to realize that you now have 7 weeks to deal with and to basically be around your teammates. 7 weeks. The first 4 weeks, I will give you a pass. But then the next 3, there's no more excuse. You're getting paid a lot of money to be a professional football player. Play like it. Get in the groove. It does not take that long. It doesn't. Listen, I'm not a professional athlete, so I don't know how long it takes. But from what we've seen out there, not only are the injuries mounting, and there is no doubt about it that has had an impact on not only the pandemic, where everyone's been told to stay inside, but also, again, no OTA offseason program, no preseason games. So everybody is coming in here so banged up. Again, look at the Eagles, look at the Raiders. There could be one positive test and the whole team could be done. So really right now with what the Cleveland Browns have had, in my opinion, there's absolutely no excuse with what's going on there. And I wouldn't be surprised, fellas, if Baker Mayfield, if he crumbles this year, I don't see him getting re-signed. I don't see it. After his rookie contract, I don't see it. And that's what
record do you think the Browns in that case, if things collapse, where do they finish in your opinion? And then
8-8.
That still puts you, even at 8-8, that still puts you middle of the road for a draft pick. Who do they want to sign if they end up trying to sign another quarterback if Baker holds out? Or does the 2021 season for the Browns become a complete wash, and then you're starting to look at the next crop of quarterbacks to bring in?
Fair. It's definitely a fair assumption, and especially for next year, there's no, as we said last episode or the episode prior, there are no good quarterbacks out there on the market because we're going to see Jerry Jones franchising his franchise quarterback in Dak Prescott, regardless of the injury. Phillip Rivers, we are now starting to see that it's starting to go downhill.
It's been going downhill for a long time
for him. And, they thought, Irsay thought that it was a possibility that maybe they could rejuvenate his career with T.Y. Hilton. And unfortunately, for his sake, that could not happen. Fellas, let's keep moving forward here. Let's get into National Hockey League. And this is a part where Rob DeLuca may have a couple of tears in his eyes. And I see he's starting to cry already because the legendary Doc Mike Emmerich has officially retired And those words I never thought would come out of my mouth at at a young age, where he's only 67, 68 years old. But again, I don't want to say only. There are so many young, talented play-by-play broadcasters, and one that I could think of actually that will most likely be taking his spot, and by the name of John Forsland, will most likely be taking his spot as the number one pairing on NBC Sports for the National Hockey League. Rob DeLuca, you've been listening to Mike Doc Emrick for essentially your entire life. Talk about what not only he meant to you, and he's actually, as Ian actually just dropped in here, he's 74. My goodness, I didn't realize that. Wow, he doesn't look 74. He doesn't sound 74. DeLuca, your thoughts on you being a Devils fan and with Doc Emrick being the Devils voice for 21 years?
Yeah, I mean, look, to say I've been blessed as a Devils fan throughout my childhood is an understatement for many reasons. The product on the ice. You'd go into East Rutherford, New Jersey, Continental Airlines Arena. You know, the place was a dump, but it was our home. But you could go in there knowing you're more than likely coming out of there with a Devils victory in the back pocket, and it was just a wonderful thing. And if you're not going to the game, you're on TV watching on Fox FSNY way back when it was FSNY or MSG, later MSG Plus, with Doc Emrick calling the game with Chico Resch. And, you know, you never quite get such a great call from someone who obviously belonged on the national stage, was on the national stage while balancing the Devils at the same time for a couple of years there until he went exclusively to NBC. That obviously broke a lot of Devils fans' hearts. Steve Cangelosi has been fantastic, by the way. There's no discrediting him. Phenomenal job. He's done well with Kenny Danico. Yeah. But, yeah, just what Doc Emrick has meant to my life personally is so much. I mean, he is the reason I am here. Why I'm in this field, why I'm looking to be a broadcaster. And to know that he is leaving this game, I mean, look, it's good he left on his own terms, but the fact that he essentially is leaving in fans' minds the wrong way. This is not how Doc Emrick's last Stanley Cup final game should have been called. He should not have been calling it from his house in Michigan. He should have been calling it at the stadium with 20,000 screaming fans in Tampa Bay or in
Dallas.
Yes. And it's a damn shame. Yeah, it's a damn shame we have to see him go the way we did in a virtual setting. One can only hope, somehow hang on to a prayer that he is going to do one more. He'll sign like a 1-game contract with NBC, one more game, call it. You know, I'm sure the Devils, even though they've honored him time in and time out, I guarantee you'll see one more time, either with that little ring of honor in the Prudential Center that the Devils have, which I personally don't understand why it exists. They barely acknowledge its existence. But also, I wouldn't be surprised getting him a banner, put a microphone logo on it. His last Emrick and the years he was the Devils broadcasters from 83 to 87 and then 91 up until 2010. I mean, or 93 until 2010. And it's just, I could see the Devils doing that one more time. Devils fans want it. Mike Doc Emrick belongs in the rafters at the Prudential Center with the other 5 legendary players that the New Jersey Devils have retired, because he himself is a Devils legend. He is a National Hockey League legend. There's a reason he's already in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And, oh my God, he is the greatest of all time in any sport. And I will take that to my grave. I will never back down from that. I will never change my mind. This news broke on Monday. I knew it would. I was down all day on it. It was just hard to believe that that man is no longer going to be calling Wednesday night hockey. He's no longer going to be calling the Stanley Cup Finals. And it's just, God bless him, and I wish him well in his retirement. And hopefully hopefully somehow he'll remain involved in the game. But for Johnny Forsland, I'm very excited. There's no doubt he's going to be the number one guy now. God bless him. John Forsland's going to do great. He's a great broadcaster. Carolina is – I'm going to be a little mean here and say Carolina is foolish for letting that happen the way it did. But you know what? NBC – better for NBC that way. He's going to do great things. He's going to be a phenomenal replacement. And Doc Emmerich, thank you.
I don't have much more to add to than that. I mean, Rob put it perfectly and so eloquently too. Doc Emmerich is one of my all-time favorite announcers, and people will say when you watch Doc Emmerich broadcast a hockey game on whether it was when he did in his time with the Devils or when he had fully became just part of the NBC structure and doing the Stanley Cup Finals and the Winter Classic and so on and so forth, that on TV, usually you don't have to announce every single thing that's happening in the game. He just always found a way to keep up. And John Forsland does the same thing, but I want to focus on Doc here. He finds a way to keep up with all of the action. Every single player that touches that puck, he has there, and he just knows what he's looking at. I understand why he went out the way he did. 74 years old. We're living in a time of great uneasiness. He's obviously of a much older age. There's more of a chance that he has that pre-existing condition now. If God forbid he ever contracted COVID-19, I understand him wanting to retire to his home in Michigan. I'm sure it's not going to be the last time we see him. He's just and the one thing that made him so great is that all of his emphatic calls, the novelty never wore off. I as a Rangers fan, all these years, because when the Rangers would play the Capitals in the playoffs, I can't say that he didn't have a little bit of bias when Henrique scored the winner in 2012, but that's okay. But anytime the Rangers had a big series, I knew Emmerich was going to be on it, and that made me even more excited for the playoff series. I was at the Winter Classic at Citi Field. During my time working for New York Sports Day, I had the opportunity when covering a Ranger game that was a Wednesday night hockey game. I had the opportunity to actually meet Doc Emmerich once. And just as everybody says, he is one of the nicest human beings you will ever meet in your life. I mean, I wish I had more time to speak with him. I remember he was sitting there at the time. I believe Vigneault was the coach of the Rangers at the time, and he was sitting in there on the press conference and got to shake his hand. And just even so much as exchange, just a hello and nice to meet you, was just such a great moment for me, because there's two. I mean, I love Gary Cohen, but there are two announcers I really relate to and I grew up with, and these are the two announcers I idolize. Mike Emmerich is one, and Joe Buck is the other. To me, there aren't two more announcers in all of sports that got me into sports the way I did and wanted me to work in sports more than Joe Buck and Doc Emmerich, and a phenomenal career. Forsland is the perfect replacement because he's got that perfect niche for hockey. He obviously his experience with the Hurricanes carries over, but it feels like, I mean, you're losing the great one. It feels like, when you talk about Doc Emmerich, you're kind of losing the Wayne Gretzky of the broadcast booth. But I understand that this was his time to go. I have a question for Rob, actually, because I know that when we one of these days, the thesaurus of Mike Emmerich and the way he describes the way a puck is passed is somehow going to find its way, and I'm going to buy that book just to find out the number of words that he used to describe it. Rob, do you have my favorite one is pitchfork. Do you have a favorite term that Doc had used in all these years of watching hockey games?
Believe me, I've heard many over the years. It's really tough. I mean, you like, I like to hear, he little finagled it up the boards. He's saucers it ahead. But of course, you never loved nothing more exciting than when a goal was scored, obviously, just the passion he threw into all of his goal calls, really, unless the game was a blowout. If the game was a blowout, then he would hold back a little bit because that's what a game at that situation would call for. But otherwise, energy always the same. But then, of course, you get a shot off the post and he puts energy into that. You hear the ping and he's like, hit the post with the shot. and just so much energy, so much. When the goalie makes a great save, my goodness. How can you hate waffle boarded away? It's just, there's too many.
I had to ask Rob, as a lifelong Devils fan, a lifelong hockey person, hockey fan. Certainly I was curious to get your thoughts on that, and kudos to you, because you said it. I couldn't have asked for a better answer to that.
Yeah,
it's beyond upsetting, but kudos to an amazing career for one of my idols as well. And one of the reasons, not the sole reason, but one of the reasons why I'm also in this field as well, is because years ago when, as for those that live in the New York tri-state area, we all have MSG Plus, or at the time, as Rob DeLuca said, Fox Sports Network, or FSN. And that's where we would hear Howie Rose. We would hear Sam Rosen. We would also hear, Sam Rosen on MSG, but on FSN, we would hear Howie Rose. We would hear Doc Emmerich. And that would be what I grew up with. And, obviously with my father being a Rangers fan, I'd have to, have my ears bleed with Sam Rosen. But, all joking aside, though, being able to hear Doc and the vocabulary that he would just, I can't even figure out a good word to really describe it. Just the vocabulary that he used and that he came up with. And
I don't know how he did it.
I don't know how he did it either. And the craziest part, fellas, is that brain of his is still working at a very, very, very high level, because at 74, calling a National Hockey League game, a Stanley Cup final game, and let's not forget, I think we can all agree on this as well. When Doc had to be in isolation, obviously, with everything going on. He was not in the bubble in Edmonton or in Toronto, and he was, as Rob DeLuca said earlier, at his home in St. Clair, Michigan. With that being said, we did see some hiccups from Doc. We did. There's no doubt in my mind that we saw hiccups from Doc, because...
But at the same time, you can partially blame the NBC for that, because it's very difficult to get a full raw feed.
Right.
That's not in a control booth or in right there at the arena, It's very difficult to transmit that into a home.
No, right, exactly. And not only that, too, a home that's nearly, 1,000 miles southeast from Edmonton. So, it's very difficult. And especially the same thing goes with Tampa, in Toronto as well. Obviously much closer to Toronto, but again, that raw feed, as Rob DeLuca said, where Rob, DeLuca, you work in production, so you know exactly how it works. So, excuse me, the problem is getting that raw feed there, and we saw the hiccups from Doc, and there were times where we heard from people, there were critics out there that said, "Is it time for Doc to go?" And I was so appalled by reading some.
Put him at the game in a real time. I guarantee you, there are no hiccups there.
Right. Well, not only that, but also my response would have been is that if you are the one that's saying this stuff, you should go and call a game.
Yeah, that too. You
from
go
the basement or from his home office. Okay. Doc Emmerich was the 2008 Foster Hewitt Memorial Award winner for outstanding contributions to hockey broadcasting and the community. That was awarded in 2008. Excuse me. He was also one of 3 winners of the Lester Patrick Trophy, presented annually by the NHL for outstanding service in the United States. In 2009, also, Doc was honored for winning the Hewitt Award by the Devils on Doc Emmerich night before a game at The Rock, January 30th, 2009. And then not all of a sudden, but in 2014, Sports Illustrated had named Doc its Sports Media Person of the Year. And then just 3 years later, in 2017, Doc Emmerich was named Sports Illustrated's greatest sportscaster of all time. There's no doubt in my mind that he is, but I want to move into the next part of this topic, and that is Johnny Forsland, who most likely will be filling the shoes of Mike Doc Emmerich. It is massive shoes to fill, but if there was a single broadcaster that could fill his shoes, it is Johnny Forsland, and especially because of the history that he has had with the Carolina Hurricanes and going back even to the Hartford Whalers as well. He's been a part of that franchise for nearly 25, almost 30 years. Okay, he knows Hartford, he knows Carolina inside and out, and now he is slowly shifting onto the national level. And as Rob DeLuca said earlier, it is so foolish for Tom Dundon to not bring back Johnny Forsland, especially when everyone loves him in the community. Every player loves him. How about Trip Tracy? He has perfect chemistry with him. Mike Maniscalco, who was the host of Fox Sports Carolinas, will be, and also the backup for Johnny Forsland when Johnny was on NBC, and that coincided with any Hurricanes games. He will now be moving into the main play-by-play spot. And a lot of it had to do with money, of course, because Johnny thought that he was good with it. Again, all through reports, alleged stuff. And the Dundons didn't want to pay for him. And because he's gotten pretty big, and now NBC will be getting a treasure in Forsland to be able to take to fill the shoes of a legendary, and as Sports Illustrated said, the greatest sportscaster of all time. Humongous shoes to fill. Ian, your thoughts on Johnny now filling in that spot, and also not only that, but I want to look at, for the three of us here, we all have a good media background. You look at guys like Alex Faust, Brendan Burke, Kenny Albert for one, where there were some talks where he could be the guy and not John Forsland to be able to replace him in terms of the number one broadcasting gig. I don't see that happening because Kenny Albert is all over the place. All over the place.
Kenny Albert has stuff going on with NFL on Fox. He
MSG.
He mainly does more ESPN radio.
Yeah.
He's actually even been asked to do a lot of postseason games because we know Joe Buck only does the LCS and the World Series, so usually the divisional series. And if the wild card round sticks around, Kenny Albert usually has to do that. He's juggling too many responsibilities, whereas John Forsland is just strictly hockey. Yeah. The transition, in my opinion, is going to be completely seamless. I mean, not many people have the aura and the presence that Mike Emmerich has, and we will say did. But John Forsland is going to be the perfect complement, the perfect person to sit in that seat. He carries himself with the headset with such distinction. He carries it with such excitement. And I mean, if Mike Doc Emmerich is my favorite NHL, besides Sam Rosen, in terms of NBC guys, if Emmerich's my number one, Forsland's always been my number two. And he's always gotten if Doc has always gotten the best series, Forsland's always gotten the second best series. So it's with the second best ratings. So this is an easy decision for NBC. Obviously we know Carolina's losing a great guy and a great broadcaster, but what's Carolina's loss is NBC's gain. So
there's no doubt about it. Yeah.
Congratulations to him, because he certainly deserves it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And now he's going to be on the number one team with Brian Boucher and also check as well. So that'll be some really good hockey next year. And 2020 just continues to bring the tough losses, to bring the weird happenings all across the world of sports, all across the world of just the world period. There's so many crazy things going on, and Doc Emmerich, just him retiring. I don't want to say suddenly, but pretty much suddenly. No one really saw it coming. Land another blow to this wacky year that still has another 2 months remaining. Not only wacky year, fellas, but we speak about COVID-19, and I want to finish this show with something that has to do with Ian and myself and comes with personally. This is a problem when it comes to collegiate sports, guys. There have been 2 positives out of 45 total tests for Marquette basketball. We want to say this, or I want to say this. Big East Media Day is on Wednesday, 9 a.m. We will be bringing you all the coverage next week on our show as well, but we'll also be coming out with articles left and right. We'll also be coming out with small podcasts here and there, trying to get some players and coaches on. No guarantees, but we're going to be doing the best we can to bring you Big East basketball at its finest in a weird year in 2020, and also the addition or the return home for UConn. So back to Marquette, as we were bringing up here. There were 45 tests that were taken for men's and women's basketball, and there were 2 positives on that whole staff. Now, both staff and players, mind you. There, according to the NCAA protocol, there is a 14-day pause for both programs. In my opinion, and DeLuca, I want to start with you because Ian and I work in this field. I want to hear the fan perspective of this before we get to the guys that work in this, including myself. Do you have a feasible season when you have a 14-day pause for a whole program, when in a 14-day span, some teams usually play 3 or 4 games?
Yeah, I mean, that ain't going to be easy. Look, this is going to be really, really tough without a bubble. We've already seen it in college football. We still don't know if Florida is going to be playing tomorrow. I think we'd probably know by now. Are they?
I have not checked, actually.
I don't think so. I don't know if they are or not. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I could check that when you guys get into talking. But, I mean, I doubt it's looking good. But, yeah, this shows that this is a problem. Like, look, we're not out of this, which, look, it sucks. No one hates it more than me, probably. Like, this has been awful this whole year. Nothing. And I don't mean for little personal gains. Everyone finds their little personal gains. I mean, just as a whole, there's not a single positive you can pull from this year. Not a chance. And honestly, with a 2-week pause mandated, not that it's a bad idea. It's really not. It's a smart way to kind of do things. I mean, obviously you should test everyone. And then if everything comes back, 3 negatives, and before the 2 weeks ends, the rest should go. But it's really, really tough. I mean, I don't know how it's going to be pulled off. I mean, if there is a pause, that is, you never know. Maybe we'll get lucky. But just the thought of it doesn't seem too feasible. But I mean, you guys would know it better. You guys are in the field. You guys get the insider info. You guys know it better than I would. I'm just a very loyal fan. I love the game, and I obviously want to see it played, but I also want it done safely. So, what do you guys think?
Ian, go with you first.
I think that the NCAA is going to do everything in its power, and all the schools are going to do everything in its power to ensure that this goes off without a hitch. I will tell you that from what I have heard, the cost of testing per school to ensure that these student athletes are tested every week is going to cost somewhere in the range of $750,000 per school to get these tests done. We all want these student athletes to get back to what we know and love. We've seen on the Division III, the Division II, and Division III levels, Division III conferences have already started folding up winter sports. Some Division II schools have already put the hammer down and said that they're not playing this winter. The NCAA can't afford to lose the Division I basketball tournament, and I'm not even saying that as a fan. I'm saying it because it's true. They lost a lot of money last year from no March Madness, no College World Series on either side. That's a big chunk of ticket revenue and merchandise and sales and concessions and so on and so forth.
And how about television?
And then I was just about to say it, and the big final piece of it, the TV deal. So that's a huge amount of money that just walked out the door. They need to do everything in their power, and they're going to. I mean, we obviously saw a college football season go off the ground. There's nothing that makes me think that they won't try, and if not, try to beg to see if they can get a college basketball season off the ground. Look, the season's starting in almost a month. It's October 23rd today, right? So 2 days from today, we are exactly 1 month until tip-off on the college basketball season, at least for Division I. But the problem is we have not seen a full schedule from any conference announced yet. Not one. We've seen a couple of crossover games. We've heard of some CTE tournaments. We've heard that Mohegan Sun is going to have a bubble, I think, with Florida and Virginia involved, with a couple of smaller schools. I think St. Pete's is in there as well. We've seen some things announced, but we have not seen any sort of grand schedule announcement. So it's very concerning. We know why it's concerning. There's a second wave. If it's not already here, it's coming. We have to protect against it. You want to talk about a sport like basketball where players and student athletes are literally, and coaches and are literally sweating on each other. Even at the scorer's table, we are sweating. You're literally sitting elbow to elbow. I know that the chief medical officer from the NCAA, Brian Hainline, he came out with a list of protocols for what every institution needs to follow. There's been discussion of having benches stretch as far down to the baseline and curve so that this way there's enough space between seats. There's chatter about, not even chatter, but legislation that's going to be passed about separating those that are playing the game, those that work the game, into tiers based on possible exposure to COVID-19. If anybody in a couple of those tiers tests positive, they need to quarantine for 2 weeks. So there's a lot that's going into this. And these proper precautions need to be taken. I know it's hard to hear, and I know it was enough of a struggle to bring back college football, even though I wasn't for it, because as we've seen, said yourself, Rob, at the University of Florida, multiple cases of COVID. Last spring at Clemson, multiple cases of COVID among their football team. So we just got to make sure that we're not being reckless about this, because if this happens and we become reckless again, we could be setting college athletics back a lot longer. I mean, we wouldn't have – I'm not even so sure we'd even have a spring at that point.
I don't see – if there is no adjustment to the 14-day rule, and exactly what Ian said, where these tests could cost or would cost nearly $750,000 per school, that would roughly eliminate any mid-major. That would eliminate D2, D3, if that's the case. And that would leave the big boys holding the fort. But when you have a team such as Marquette, that is, in terms of the big boys, on the lower level of the big boys. And again, the Big East is still nothing to be reckoned with. But in terms of the Power 5 conferences, and then they're like right in the middle, say they're on the bottom tier of that. It is the truth. They are. Marquette has to quarantine for 14 days. If they do not come up with a better solution, there will not be a college basketball season. There will not be a feasible college basketball season, fellas. There will not be anything where television, and exactly what Ian said, collegiate athletics could and will be set back so far that we could see like a doomsday in NCAA, and that would not only affect student athletes, but that would be the worst case scenario that, I hate to say it, everybody that's listening, and to Ian and myself that really work in it, and also Rob DeLuca, who also works for a network that also produces these games as well. So not only would that affect Ian and myself, but that would also affect Rob as well. The worst case scenario is not out of the woods. And I think that as we are starting to see, and I think this Marquette blow of having just 2 positives where you shut down a whole program for 2 weeks. Like I said, and I'll go back to it. If there's no change or if there is no alternate plan that is come up, that is decided on safely, I don't see how a team could play 21, 22 games. I don't see, or you know what? How many non-conference games some schools have? 3, 4. So let's say 24 games, maybe a couple of road games within the state. So 2, so 26. Okay, fine. So you're playing 5 less games. How many less games, guys? What? That's 3 or 4 less games? Usually it's what, 29, 30?
Yeah, so you're talking about probably about 5 or 6 less games. I mean, even more at the Division II and Division III levels.
Right, exactly. So it is so difficult, and we're starting to see these MTEs that, you know, these schools are joining together, and it's similar. It's like a makeshift bubble almost. But it's so difficult to see what the deal is, and I want to see what we're going to hear on Wednesday from the Big East, because we are going to be hearing from Steve Wojciechowski, the head coach from Marquette, and we are going to see him most likely in isolation because that's where he has to be, as are his players. Let's not forget. Let's look to the more competitive side of things. Sakar Anam is gone. Marcus Howard is gone. The leading scorer, all-time history for Marquette, is gone. The only one that's really left is Theo John. There's a few others that are there that are freshmen, sophomores. This not only we'd love to hear what they have to say and what potentially Jay Wright has to say as well, but once conference season comes about, you're going to be traveling to Wisconsin, to Nebraska, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York. Now let's add Connecticut to the mix. That's right, fellas. Connecticut, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Those 3 we just heard from Governor Andrew Cuomo just a couple of days ago, that things are rising in those 3 states. You can't lock them down because there's so much ties to the economy there. We won't get into that. But I personally believe that will have also a major impact on how games can be played, where they're going to be played, and also some non-conference schedules as well will take a toll on that as well. Fellas, just to conclude this show, for our St. John's fans out there, just announced today they will be playing Boston College. They will be playing ACC powerhouse Boston College. The lower end of the powerhouse conference, if you will.
I know you didn't just call BC an ACC powerhouse.
Exactly. I was going to say, wait, hold on. Yeah. Boston College, November 30th at Mohegan Sun. That will most likely conclude their non-conference schedule. That includes LaSalle, Fordham. Bryant is off their schedule. Bryant actually will be playing Syracuse, I believe sometime in November. Carrier Dome. So that's going to be some good stuff. And next week, fellas, we'll be having some guests on for college basketball. So it's going to be tons of fun. And for all of those that are watching now, we can't thank you enough for joining us here. And Ian and Rob, really, again, can't thank you enough for being here and being a part of this. And any final thoughts before we head off for the night?
No, not really. I just I'm still kind of thinking back to everything we discussed about Doc Emmerich, and it's been another. I mean, every day it's a wait and see approach, guys, and we just all have to be safe. And if we're safe and we do the right thing, hopefully we'll have less cases, and hopefully we'll get rid of this pandemic forever.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. DeLuca.
Yep. Stay safe out there. Stay healthy. We're in this together. We got to come together. No more division. Let's go.
For all of those that are watching right now, just a couple of business notes here. Coming up on actually tomorrow morning, starting at 11 a.m., we will be continuing our cross-promotion segment, the Scouts Minute, from the New York Professional Scouts Association Baseball is still on, still here. And also something, guys, that we did not mention, I want to say, today marked 54 days consecutively without a positive COVID test. So kudos to Major League Baseball and finally figuring it out, where they have a bubble along with 16,000 fans in Texas. So really,
that's another big thing. If the cases stay off the fans, if there's no cases in the stands,
we'll see. We'll definitely
a great sign for the rest of the
show. Let's not jinx it, fellas.
Yep, exactly. So let's get back to this here. So again, our continuous cross promotion with the Scouts Association, my good friend, and will be one more week from actually tomorrow, former New York Yankees, or almost former New York Yankees area scout and scouting supervisor, Caesar Prescott. For those that do not know, he is the one that went to Grant Street High School in Brooklyn and found the legendary, or was at one point, Dylan Betances. So really, really good stuff there. He will be retiring, and we will be honoring his legendary career tomorrow morning starting at 11 a.m., right here on the Eastern Observer and the New York Professional Scouts Association channel. Also, next Tuesday, fellas, will be our good friends on Tuesday nights. Al Carl, Ryan Joy from Minutes to Bell Time, Gary Miheffi, John Smith, and John Diaconti will be hosting episode number 25 of the Essential Wrestling Podcast, presented to you by ProWrestlingPick'em.com. That comes your way right here on the I-95 Sports Network, on Zingo Channel 198, and on the Eastern Observer moving forward. So it's going to be tons of fun. A great slate of shows coming up on the Eastern Observer. We will be back next Friday night. And one final thing, Ian, a good time last night. And you're actually going to be the co-host of the interview series. So it should be tons of fun when we get all of our guests together and we knock this thing out of the ballpark.
I can't wait. Like I said last night, we're still in the process of lining up our first guest. Hopefully we'll have some sort of confirmation this weekend, and we'll be able to start promoting next week.
Going to be tons of fun, everybody. But for those, again, that have been watching, we cannot thank you enough. Once again, for Ian Schreier, Rob DeLuca, and for all of us at the Blackjack Media Group, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We'll see you next time.